So guess who got all the way through the intro without remembering to mute my phone? I realized it like 3 seconds before the credits ended there, so that was what the ding was. There we go. So, hi everybody. I am Greg Smithwick from So Local Live and So Local Pasco. For those of you who have been around the stuff that I do for a long, long time, Sam Ronan, I think, is in his car. He's muted because I'm sure he's making his way to somewhere where there's a better microphone. But joining us tonight, you may remember from a couple of months ago when we had a show with James Washington is a local educator and is running for school board in Pasco County, our county here in Florida. And it's funny because I'm so used to just talking to Pasco County now that I kind of have to explain to people that aren't from here what's happening. But um, if you have not been paying attention to local education politics, and I want to say it that way for a reason, we have Pasco County has been the focus of a whole cadre of anti-trans, anti-gay activists. They have been invading private events like Drag Queen Story Hour that was held for a while by our friend Joan at Paperback Exchange Bookstore. They have inserted themselves into the dialogue about what we teach our kids in our schools, in our county, um, and have been pretty heavy-handed doing so. And Jim has been part of the 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 shelter for kids. And I want to make that really clear that what we're talking about here is kids from marginalized communities, be they gay or be they trans or any cross section of these marginalized communities. They are under attack. And I'm from a background in broadcasting and counseling. So I'm crazy, but I can self treat. Um, so, but here's what I want to make sure that you get. We know in the counseling profession, in the social work profession, we know that kids who are gay and trans attempt suicide at a higher rate than kids that are not part of that subset of kids. As bad as we think teen suicide is, it is much worse in that subset, and there's a reason for that. Now, I'm not going to call. I'm going to say we think. We believe that part of the reason for that difference is the lack of support for gay and trans kids from their homes, from their schools, from their churches, from any adult group that has input into their lives. And the obvious way to fix that part is to make sure that in at least one matrix of interactions with the adult world, that these kids have support. That if they're not getting the support from their parents, maybe because their parents are ideologically opposed, maybe because their parents just are clueless and really don't know how to deal with a child who's going through these issues because they don't have any other adults in their life that they can depend on to get accurate information about what is and is not happening when it comes to trans-friendly care of kids. No one is having surgery when they're 15 years old. This is not a thing that's happening, right? But I hear it every night from people like Carrie Lake in Arizona, and people with a national audience are pounding that. And the machine that we need to build to oppose that starts with supporting parents of trans kids in their attempts to engage and help their children through that process. And not just trans kids. I know that's the focus right this second, but there's a broader group of kids that feel alienated and unsupported in just trying to live their damn lives at 15 and 16. Now, I will tell you, I was a hot mess between 14 and 17 years old, and I wasn't trying to do any of the things that these kids are trying to cope with. I am a cisgendered white kid. I didn't grow up having to fight for my very existence among other groups. And that's what's happening. So that machine will include parents, information networks for parents, but maybe even more critical is going to be educators and an education system that when they show up where they are required by law to be for 7 or 8 hours a day, they are not getting marginalized, tortured, bullied, and killed, and literally dying. And Jim has been an outspoken supporter of those kids. I'm getting a little emotional. This feels like a big moment to me. Like we're in a moment where we're riding on a knife edge between saving kids' lives and not. And I can't imagine anybody arguing for the other side of this equation, but they are. and they are doing it loudly and effectively. They are affecting turnout in our community in elections. They are affecting who runs in our community. They are donating money, large amounts of money, to those candidates. And Jim, being an educator who gives a crap about the kids in general, and probably his kids in particular in the school system, he's the guy we've been waiting for to get on the school board and challenge these things. There are people who are on the school board who haven't said, yes, trans kids are bad, but they haven't really been overtly supportive. And Jim is that guy, right? So the idea that we were going to potentially get, maybe a guy elected who had that focus is looking much more likely today, because yesterday, there was a court decision that disqualified his Republican opponent from the race, even though he's on the ballot. Now, I'm going to let Jim talk because he's the guest, but I want Jim to tell the story about how this, what's happened here that makes it more and more likely that you're going to be on the school board in November, James. So please.
Thank you for that setup. And before I get into those details, I'm going to go back to something that you led with, which is the sort of staggering number of like suicide for the LGBTQ community. I want to say it's something like 70% students who fall into that category are more likely to attempt or think about suicide. Now, with that being said, that number, and I may have the number wrong, but you can find it, GLSEN, a lot of different websites talk about it, drops by more than half. So that 70% rise drops down to like 30% rise with one accepting adult in a classroom or one accepting adult in that child's life.
Right.
And I think that's key to the discussion we're going to have probably today and through the rest of this campaign. And God forbid, I hope, God willing, we are the member on the school board. Which gets us to the announcement that you were just leading up to.
Right.
So we had at the primary, I guess setting the stage, 3 candidates in this one district. We were the only district that had 3, which is why we're going on from the primary to the general election. One of the members, a man named Steve Meisman, did not win enough votes. None of us won enough votes to win outright. But his was the trailing number of the 3 of us. So he was eliminated from contention going into the general election. About 2 days before the primary, he decided that he was going to challenge the residency of not only myself, but that of the other person who ended up being sort of the leading horse coming out of primary, and his name is Al Hernandez. So they tried to fast track that lawsuit. It became a little bit slower because of the election and people scheduling. So we had a hearing probably a week or so after the general election or the primary election, in which they kind of laid out the case and we gathered facts, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Fast forward to last week on Monday. We had a secondary hearing where the evidence was sort of shared. And at that point, we thought we were going to have a hearing yesterday to hear all of the evidence, all the cases. The court was going to make a decision on validity of the claim and whether or not we had, in fact, established residency. On top of that part of the lawsuit, Brian Corley was also sort of sued as being a member of the government who could have stopped this all from happening had he done his due diligence and researched whether or not we actually lived where we said we lived. Fast forward to last night, we were told...
I have my own complicated relationship with Brian Corley, so I'm, imagine...
It's horrible. I mean, the poor man is trying to run an election. He's got his own things for supervisor, that canvassing boards and stuff that he's involved with. This was just something that was an inconvenience that he really couldn't do because he has no authority on doing research and investigation of, we swear an oath when we sign our documents that we do in fact live. We publish driver's license. We were asked to produce evidence that we live where we say we live. And he takes us at the word with us swearing an oath. So that part of the lawsuit really didn't make a sense to a lot of us. But it fast forwards to Friday night of last week. I got a phone call from my attorney who said, your case has been sort of stopped. It wasn't thrown out. It wasn't ended. He wasn't going to proceed with it, which I think is another avenue that we'll discuss later. Monday, the case against Al was actually heard in court. And as a result of that hearing, the judge decided that Al had in fact not qualified for the election because he didn't meet the residency requirement. And I believe it stems from, I wasn't in the courtroom, but from what I've read and what I've heard from my attorney, it stems from an interview he did with the Tampa Bay Times, I want to say back in May, where he is on record saying, I didn't live in the house in Zephyr Hills. It's on 20th Avenue, if I'm not mistaken. He moved in or purchased the house in April or March with the intent to live there, but there were things that needed to be fixed, renovated for him and his wife to move in. And he had not actually lived in the house at the time. And that's sort of the quote that's in Tampa Bay Times. And it's the quote that has come back to haunt him because that's the evidence that the judge has decided that he is ineligible to be on the ballot, although ballots have already gone out. And according to a meeting that we had with Brian Corley, there are votes that have already been returned. So there are people who have cast a vote that now becomes null and void because the candidate is not accepted on the ballot.
Okay, so this is fascinating because I don't remember when I had the first conversation with somebody that I had where it was clear to everybody that Al did not live in that house. So it seems like for months this has been an open secret. And the other thing that I want to make sure that I say, because I'm sure there are folks that are going to say, "Oh, you know, those wily Democrats trying to get us." That's not what happened here. His primary opponent, the other Republican, is who opened this case. Is that correct?
One of two cases. There's another case pending that went to the FCC. It will not be heard until I think November 18th or so. So it was not going to disrupt the general election.
Right.
This did. But yeah, you're right. This was not a Democratic leaning person that raised this issue. This was his Republican opponent who finished third. But again, he did file the lawsuit before those results that came in. So anything could have happened in the primary Al could have won outright, which would have been a completely different discussion that we're having tonight, because who knows what the judge would have decided at that point.
Right. So I'll argue with the Democrats privately about why they didn't, file a complaint. But actually, earlier today when I was speaking on my personal page to whoever might be listening, the 2 or 3 Republicans that might accidentally view this, this is not a everybody in Pasco problem, except it is. Their failure to vet their own candidate here has led to a situation where now they're going to ask for some sort of special dispensation to get another guy on the ballot. Sorry, Republicans, you should have done your homework. And
I mean to cut you off there, but what I've understood, and again, I've never run for office before, and I feel bad saying this, I didn't really pay attention to other candidates in years past. But this is not the first time Republicans and or Democrats, but I think it's mostly the Republicans that we can point to, have pulled this kind of situation. There are county commissioners. I think there was a man running for judge who...
James froze up on me.
Yeah, I don't want to spend time talking about names and having to go back and say,
but it's a trend, and it's we've seen it in Pasco, and we've also seen the Republicans in the rest of Florida do the same thing numerous times. So it's they have a playbook, and their playbook failed this time.
But it failed because he opened his mouth.
Right.
Had he not been quoted in the Tampa Bay Times, I don't know that we would have this discussion that we're having.
So Cesar in the comments says, what does this mean for this specific seat? If this court decision stands, it means you're the next school board member for Pasco County.
That is my understanding. Again, my attorney told me that there are very few avenues of, if any,
I can't think of relief that would come from the court that would fix this for the plaintiff.
Well,
With the exception
we've
of
seen
the-
cases like this, and I can't imagine it sticking. I think we're talking to school board elect Jim Washington.
I kind of feel like that now because we live in the America that we live in. I want to make sure that what I'm taught as an organizer, as an activist, is run through the tape, run till election night at midnight. So
Right.
I think it's, I don't know what your campaign strategy is, and I want to be clear to everybody that I'm not involved in James' campaign strategy, but still knocking doors, still getting the word out, in asking my viewers to post it on your page. What's happened here? That we support Jim. Jim's the guy. You said something really interesting in the pre-show. This is not the way you want to win. Listen, listen. If you win a Formula One race because it starts raining on lap 52, you take the W. You take those points toward the championship. So I get it, and I understand. But we've been so long kind of beat by this system. It just feels like I'll take the win if it happens on a bad roughing the passer call, as we saw with the Buccaneers and Tom Brady on Sunday.
Yeah, and I understand that, and a lot of people have blown up my email and my Facebook page saying you should take this as a victory. What I don't want to sit on the board, because we're already facing those attacks that we kind of previewed in your introduction, that
Right.
Moms for Liberties and these other groups are constantly attacking our school boards. What I don't want to add to that discussion is you won by a technicality.
Right.
So getting back to a point you just made, going through the tape requires us to keep mentioning, flip your ballot over, please vote.
Yes.
Even if you think the vote doesn't matter because it's been decided,
Oop.
let's make sure that on November 8th, whether it's because I've won by this quote unquote technicality because Al's no longer on the ballot, I want to show that we had more votes on that day, so there's no chance of any kind of funny business, special election, anything, or even at the very least, that the governor can't turn around and say, you were placed on this board nefariously somehow, and I'm going to remove you like you did, or like he removed.
Yeah, again, this is not a new play where he would replace the state attorney. Hey, how are you?
Can I borrow him for a second? MTV needs to take his microphone off.
Sure, Sam and I will sing.
That's fine.
Things that I never thought I would get to say.
Lovely to go from the anemic ghost. Okay, go ahead. So I'm gonna pull Jim's image down there. So Sam, hi buddy.
Hey man, how you doing?
I'm having a pretty good day.
I bet. Man, that monologue you opened with was both long and frankly incredible.
Oh, there's so many jokes there. But,
Wow,
it's not that kind of show.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. I think about this a lot. I mean, it's a fight that I've been fighting in the counseling field for a decade. The men that I tended to interact with were men who were in trouble for domestic violence, who had who had toxic masculinity issues, and one of the things about those men is they are dismissive of or belligerent about gay people. And I used to talk specifically about Duck Dynasty, the guy from that show that said all those horrifically homophobic things. I'm thinking about a 9-year-old boy who's sitting down to watch that show with his dad, and who might feel like maybe he likes boys, and his dad is like, it's fucking disgusting, this guy's really got our back. And if your dad is messaging that, and I know boys who have grown up in an environment where there was hostility towards even the idea of gayness, even when we weren't talking about their child, that I could see how they were, their lack of acceptance was making things harder for their kids, and maybe even fatal for their kids. And I spent a lot of time with the dads in my group on that, in my class on that, because I wanted to make sure that they got that. They may not think they're hurting their own child, but if 1 in 8 boys is gay, then it's entirely possible.
You don't even know.
Dads in this room, right? So when you're dismissive or hostile towards that, that existence, you're being hostile towards your own child's existence, and we know that has terrible outcomes for boys and men.
Well, I think one of the interesting things about this entire culture war scandal around trans kids and queer kids in our schools is the accusation that the teachers, the gyms of the world are making these people's kids queer.
Yeah.
And no, I mean, you and I know, obviously, it's because they don't feel safe coming out to their parents. They feel
Right.
safe coming out to people at school. That's
Right.
the central issue.
Okay. So I just this is the whole show. Like I don't, if we do nothing else, I just wanted to have Jim come on and spend a few minutes with us and talk about. So I want to look forward for a minute here, because I mean there's a lot that can happen. But let's say we get to November 7th, and you are in fact the school board member elect. One of the things that I think people have trouble understanding is that one school board member is not going to fix all that's wrong, but what do you prioritize once we know that you're the guy? What do you what's your first thing? What do you have the ability to take initiative on some things, or is it just a matter of giving an opinion?
Well, I think it's more of the opinion, but there are a couple of things that are happening as this board moves towards the end of this year. The idea of the salary increases is getting some pushback with our faculty. We were promised, it's been in the news for years or for weeks now, that we have gotten this like 5% raise and everybody's excited about it. Yet we just got the first paycheck that was supposed to include that raise, and people were looking at $75 or in some cases $30 raises. So that's not the 5% we were promised. We have bus drivers that are completely underpaid and undervalued. Those are people who I have spent my campaign trying to say, you're going to have a voice on this board. So that would be one of the priorities. All of this stuff with the LGBTQ issues is really priority number 1A in my book. The safe space stickers. We need to make a decision.
Right.
And I've not been hiding behind any kind of position, but I've told everybody that my job on there is to be a vocal voice for everybody, and I need to make sure that I uphold that.
Good. So that, good answer. I mean, I was sure you were that guy, but but it's nice to have you say it on our show. Alicia, guess who is likely a public school teacher? We can't make them do their homework. We certainly can't make them queer. And then Cher came back with the gay agenda includes homework. Sorry, kids. That's just a fact. So I want to do one of the things that I thought I might stress is I had an experience today where somebody that I know and am assisting with some things, basically just by being present and making sure they have some support, called to talk to a social worker about their child in the school system. And it was a frustrating conversation, even though all I was doing was listening, because it was clear to me that the social worker that she was in contact with is overwhelmed, that she's got a lot going on and not enough hours in the day and too many kids, that parents that she has to respond to. And I want to make that point, that when we talk about what's happening to our school system, it's not an accident. It's chipping away at programs and budgets and services that have always been part of the public school system that now are being grafted off into private enterprise, and the funding is going away. It's they've said it out loud. They've said the quiet part out loud, is to make government small enough to drown it in a bathtub. Well, the public schools are a really good target for that, because if your kid is not getting the services they need at a public school, they're going to want to go to the parents going to want to move them to a charter school that has better funding.
Well, they're going to have to, and it's not going to be their fault at that point.
Right. And there are things that are built into the public school system that are not built into charter schools or required of charter schools. One of the ones that's always on my mind, and we just had a pretty good example of this, is the hurricane shelter system is broadly schools, but only public schools. The charter school down the street in the strip center, they are not required to be a hurricane.
What the hell is that?
Nothing.
I was on a Zoom call last week sometime, and somebody on the chat may remember this. It was the unions from down south in DeSoto County, I believe it was. It was Orange County and Volusia County. I think we're all on, or Polk County, I'm sorry, and Volusia County. We're all on this talk, and the person from the southern southwest county that was affected by the hurricane was talking about there's a charter school, a private school, that's talking about opening again. They're going to be up and running. So this one small section of kids, yes, they were affected by the storm, but it's going to get back to some sort of normalcy very soon, if not this week. But the rest of the schools in that district, they're being still used as shelters, or the teachers who are supposed to be working the schools lost everything in their life, and they don't have the teachers to staff the schools.
Right.
So that's part of the argument that's not getting the focus that it should, nor is this story that came out, I want to say the end of May, that the state of Florida lost $1.3 billion to charters in the voucher system. That's money that went there. And in most cases, those kids didn't last in the charters, but the money stayed at the school. And now we're being asked to be doing these things. And these are the discussions. And I would key people in. I know that we're talking about that maybe this decision and who wins this race has already been made. But let's assume for a second it isn't. The man I'm running against is supported and endorsed by the governor, who makes the state of Florida rank 41st in per pupil spending, 48 in teacher salaries, 48 in SAT scores. And he doesn't seem that that's going to be changed if he gets elected. We need more money so that that social worker or the psychologist that you were talking about that, again, started this conversation would not be so burdened. Or that ESE teacher who's got 80 kids on their caseload would not have that burden as well. And that's the piece that the general public doesn't see, because they're not in the schools on a regular basis. They may see a homework assignment, or they'll see something on Facebook that somebody supposedly got as a parent of a student. They're not physically in the room, and they don't see the burdens that we're being asked to carry. And with every legislative session, another burden gets on, and in most cases, it's an unfunded mandate that we just don't have the finances to.
And I want to ask from your perspective in the trenches, you are seeing. I don't want to tell you. I'm asking. Are you seeing people flee the profession? Are you seeing teachers leave?
I know of several that have left this year based on the legislation. But hey, I mean, you could go across the county line to whichever county direction you live closest to, and in most cases get paid a little bit more for the same work. Yeah. And why wouldn't you want to do that? It's very hard to find the loyalty to a school district if they're not showing it back to you. I met with a bus driver 2 days ago, actually on Thursday when I was picking up all the things for the hurricane relief. We were at a gas station getting gas together, and she was like, I'm going to move to Ocala and drive buses. I'm going to make $12 more a day easily just going and living there. And I'll park my RV in a lot there, and it won't be hard for me to move.
Right. So I don't know if there's anything more specific. One of the things that is worth saying that we're talking specifically about the school system, the public school system in Florida, and particularly about Pasco County school system. But anywhere you look in Florida government since Rick Scott was elected, so we're talking now 12 years ago, right? 12, 16 years ago?
11.
A while back, right? Okay. Anywhere you look in Florida government, you are going to find this exact same phenomenon play out, where people that oversee, I'll give you, for instance, in battery intervention programs for men who are in trouble and women who are in trouble for domestic violence, there's oversight. There's supposed to be inspectors that come out and actually look through client files to make sure that the providers are doing an adequate job, because it's a very serious matter. He cut the number of inspectors in the state by 80%. And then when they overturned the Violence Against Women Act, they even did away with that. We hadn't seen an inspector come look at client files since the second year of Rick Scott's reign as governor in the state of Florida. And I know that happened in environmental oversight. I know that happened in criminal justice and prison administration oversight. Every department of the state of Florida's government was eviscerated in the oversight department, so that when things go wrong, there's nobody to look into it.
Right.
And that's their goal, because what they want to tell
The
you is
agenda.
that government can't do these things. Look at all these kids that die in the care of blah.
Right.
Well, that's happening because there are not enough caseworkers.
Yeah.
There are not enough social workers. There are not enough teachers and paraprofessional educators. There just aren't enough. And we're the third most populous state. And yet we are. That's worse. Let me tell you, that's worse than Alabama and Mississippi. It's worse. It's worse because with a tax base this big, we should be, in the funding department, at the very least, in the top 5% of education systems in this country. And we are not. We're paying for the wrong things, or we're just not paying for things and hoping it all works out.
Well, we're not paying.
Yeah.
We're just not paying, period.
Absolutely.
Right. We're not collecting revenue to support a more robust education. We're just not.
We go back 25 years or even longer, because I don't even remember when the lottery actually came into existence.
Yes.
But that big lie that it was going to supplement what we've already put into our education budget, and what we found out was not more than a couple of years later, it became the education budget. They pilfered everything else out and left only that piece. So
right.
that's the thing that people are not looking at. And voting for my opponent is going to cause that to continue to happen, and that's
right.
extremely important to get it.
So while we got a few minutes, let's talk about up the ticket from local school board races. Right, we have an opportunity to move the needle on Florida State Supreme Court justices and other appointees that we know are Federalist Society members who are appointed by DeSantis and by Rick Scott. We have an opportunity to get rid of the absentee Senator Marco Rubio, who the other day missed a vote on disaster relief.
Of course.
Right after Ian hit Florida. Now, that wasn't specifically Ian relief, but where is he in this conversation if he can't say, gosh, we might need that money in Florida someday, so I better show up to vote? Or I should show up to vote no because I'm an asshole. I don't know why he would vote no, but he didn't even show up.
It sounds like you just said it.
He didn't even show up.
Yeah.
Right. So obviously the Senate is not Marco Rubio's priority. And so we should probably put somebody in that chair that is going to prioritize it. And I will remind people till I'm old and gray that Val Demings came to Pasco Pride, the first Pasco Pride. She was up on stage, and talk to the people at Pasco Pride. Why would you not? Why would you not vote for Val Demings in this circumstance? It's the right thing to do. We have a gubernatorial race that I said this is when I got really angry this morning on my personal live stream where I talked about where is your sense of urgency, people? Why aren't you out knocking doors with me? Because I want you to think about what 4 more years of Ron DeSantis is going to look like in this state. Because not only will he have won once, he will now feel invincible. He'll feel like he can do anything because he can never get elected governor again. And we know what his next target is probably going to be. We have an opportunity to stop that. We have an opportunity to say, nope, that's too much.
And talking about Charlie Crist, which you haven't mentioned in my name, but one of his policies for education is to put all of the educators in the state on the state insurance plan. The amount of money that it would save districts and would save teachers. I mean, we go back to the thing I talked about a few minutes ago, which is we got this raise that was supposed to be monumental, but what they didn't say is our premiums were going to go up and our insurance plans were going to go up. So that 5% looks more like a 2.4% raise. And then with inflation and all the other numbers that people will throw at you, we're not even catching up to where we should be.
Right.
That piece alone should motivate every educator that I know and in this state to say, we can't be paid as bad as we are. We can't have our schools funded as bad as we are. We can't have SAT scores and test scores that are as bad as they are. But I can't afford for my family to live like this. We've got to see a change. In 25 years of Republican rule, we have done nowhere.
Okay. Are you telling me that teachers are not on the state insurance plan?
We are not on the same state insurance.
Oh, yeah.
This is like that thing where a famous actor dies and you go, I didn't even know they were still alive. Like,
Oh, no, I knew
or
that.
Tulsi Gabbard left the Democratic Party. I didn't even know she was a member of the Democratic Party, right? But I didn't know
You're
that.
not.
That's
And
crazy.
we are in the state retirement plan, but here's another tidbit of information that doesn't get enough play. We're still paying into this Russian bank someplace where our pension is tied in. We've lost millions of dollars because we weren't smart enough, like every other state in the union, to pull that money when that war started. We left our money in and we lost millions.
Right.
Billions? Why did I think we were over $1 billion in investment?
I would not
Maybe.
with that number.
Okay, so we got a lot of good reasons to be happy tonight. One of the biggest one in my world is that Jim looks like he's going to be the next school board member, the school board member elect for Pasco County. I'm so happy about that, and I'm going to hang my hat on this as a kind of a stunning win. Even though you may not, you may feel like you have an asterisk next to you. No, look, you've done the fight. Well, you've got the media coverage. There are literally people from MTV walking through this shot while we're on. You have raised our awareness level to the rest of the world by a lot. So thank you, James. Thank you. I wish more people would run once. Just run once. Maybe you'll hate it. Maybe it'll be a disaster, and you'll curl up in a fetal position for 6 months on your couch. That's what I did. But look at where we are, right? And this is the only way it happens, that we don't have an unopposed county commission race. It's the only way, is people have to step up and run. And
someone's got to do it
and take some hits. About the fact that you're poor, or you rent your house, or don't own it, or I'm sure Jim has heard lots of crazy conspiracy-minded crap about who he isn't in this process, and we need folks to step up.
And I think that might be the silver lining. I know you're calling this as a victory, and it probably is. Let's be truth about it. But I think what we have now is there's a window where people can look around and say, he did it. Look at all the stuff that was said about him, and he's still able to hold his head up high. I mean, heaven forbid I don't win. I'm going to go back to work on that Monday or that Wednesday after, and I'm going to show up to my students, and I'm going to teach my lessons like I'm supposed to for the next whatever number of years I'm allowed to teach. But the fact that I'm going to be able to win and get on the school board should, in this district, should be motivation for somebody else to say, I can do it too.
If Jim can do it, I can do it. Right.
And you need to.
And I have some folks in mind to run for the other seats. I actually been thinking about it.
Let's run them all.
But county commission, state senate, state house, these are all things that we need to really step into. We are no doubt a red county, but we can make them holler. Clearly, we can make them holler, and so that's my thing for the day. I'm super grateful to James for stepping into this. The fray and making some headway. So I think that's all I wanted to talk about tonight, was just how good this feels, and to remind people in Pasco County, Jim is going to need donations. Jim is going to need your legwork. Going to need you to knock some doors, because that's still going to happen right up through election day, to make sure that let's talk about the people that didn't know any of this was happening, that need to know. If you were going to vote for Al, you have to rethink your ballot choice here, because he's been disqualified. And what you don't want is everybody showing up to vote for somebody who's been disqualified. And not, if there's some last minute court thing where they put this other guy on the ballot, so Jim still needs assistance and support, and your good words, and your sharing on Facebook, and you're showing up for his events. Look, there's nothing worse than when you put on a meet the candidate event and 4 people show up and 3 of them are related to the candidate. So if you have an hour to go meet up with Jim at a shopping center somewhere, fill up the crowd. You don't have to do anything. Just be present.
We're going to be at Cucci Elementary tomorrow. Or not tomorrow. I'm sorry, Friday for a fall festival. Friday night is the big war on Gall Boulevard, 301, the 9 Mile War between Zephyr Hills and Land O'Lakes. We'll be at that game. There'll be lots of functions. We have on Saturday the Stuff the Bag event that we're doing in Sims Park. So please come out, ask me questions. There are plenty of people who will watch this and hear this and say, I didn't really know about this race, or I didn't know about him. I need to ask him this question. And that's what's going to help our school board go in the right direction,
Right.
is that we're serving the needs of the people, not the special interests, which is what it's being served by if the other person wins.
All right.
Right.
Closing question, not related to any of the political or well, it is educational. What's your favorite thing to teach? What's your favorite thing to get to with students?
When I was teaching literature, that was because in most cases they would be stories that kids have heard from their friends. Oh, you're going to have to read such and such a book. One of my favorites is The Book Thief. It's a Holocaust novel.
Oh, yeah.
Just the idea that you could get kids interested in a subject and see a perspective that had never been introduced to them. And that moment that the light bulb goes on is a moment that very few people, I'm sure doctors doing a surgery that's never been done who have that success, they know that feeling. Astronauts, I mean, different professions have that moment. But for teachers, to see a room of 30 eyes just go, oh my God, I finally get this.
Yeah.
Right.
That would have been my favorite thing ever to do.
This is
Wow.
why he's our guy. That's the best possible answer, James. Thank you so much. Look, we'll see you on the Funny Papers out there on Facebook. And we want to encourage everybody to, give whatever support you can. There are many, my friend Sam Ronan tells me there are many paths to justice, and you need to pick yours. You need to pick the one that won't kill you.
We
So
found a new one apparently, and I thank you guys
More
for
than
this
one.
platform. You have been strong supporters of mine since the very beginning, and this victory.
well, we just don't have anything better to do.
This is about me.
All right. We want more Jim Washingtons. We want to do more shows where we celebrate that people are getting this stuff done. So thank you, everybody, for joining us. Thank you, Kelly Smith, Realtor. Thank you to our friend Cesar Garcia and his amazing team, who, by the way, have fed well over 1,000 people this week in Manatee County and parts of Hardy County, which are still short on services and power and recovery. We think about Fort Myers Beach because we see all the bomb blast video, but all the way up to the St. Johns River and St. Augustine, there are people who are still struggling, who lost all their food. And Cesar and his group fed well over 1,000 people. I think they fed 1,000 people by Saturday. So I'm sure by now it's considerably higher than that. So thank you to Cesar. Thank you to our Patreon supporters. And a little side thank you to the couple of folks that took the time today to donate to a personal project that I asked for help with. That's meaningful. And I can tell you that there were tears of gratitude about that. All right. It's been a lot of teary gratitude around here today. So I'm going to go do more of that out by a fire, which is my favorite place to cry because it's dark and no one can see me. And wish you all the best. Again, thank you, everybody, for your time and attention. Please share this out on your social media. Share it to the groups that are supportive of gay and trans folks in your community, so they get the lift we're getting from things going for just a moment in the right direction here. Okay, love you all. Thank you, Sam. I know you had a lot of time to talk tonight.
No, that's cool. I mean, we're talking about
You all
Jim. Man.
asshole
We're
have
focusing
3
on Jim. I mean, the only thing that I think I would add before we pop out is, Jim, I heard at least twice concerns that getting in on a technicality would be seen as some kind of blight. And man, I got to tell you, I don't think it's a technicality. I think it's because you're the only ethical person. You're going to get in because you're the only one that wasn't violating some kind of ethical code.
Yep.
And that's the important thing. That's what we focus on.
Yep.
Thank you.
It's an ethical victory.
Thank you.
Yep.
Hey, can I do one more shameless plug?
Oh, please.
Of course, man.
People
Do
of
5.
Pasco County, we did a drive for the victims of Southwest Florida. We filled a 20-foot box truck from U-Haul. I need to thank the U-Haul company for donating the truck, but also the people of Pasco County, the students, the teachers, the businesses, that within a week, we had enough donations to bring down there to overwhelm a facility that had no idea that Pasco County, where it was on the map, was able to send down goods. So just one last time, thank you from the bottom of my heart for anybody who donated or helped with that cause, because people absolutely needed it. And we know that those people will stand up when we need it later.
Yeah, I'm waiting for anybody in Matt Lachey to be able to communicate with the outside world, because I started a Hurricane Ian discussion group like 3 days out before the storm because it looked like we were going to get smacked, and I kept it up because I want to find a way to help some small below the fundraising horizon charities in Matlacha, which is the little tiny island between Pine Island and Cape Coral that just got obliterated. And like the terrible truth is we don't know who among the charity workers on that tiny little island is still alive, still has still has a building to go to. So just stay tuned. And if you want to join that Ian discussion group, you're welcome to. Lots of relief efforts going south. We're posting about as many of them as we can. Some relief efforts going east and north because they're having problems too. The St. John's still above flood stage for most of its length. Anyway, join that group. Send me a message if you need an invite to it. And we'll be also posting about the Tasco County effort. Thank you so much, James. Thank you, Sam. Sorry we forgot to do a show yesterday. That was the thing I realized about 10 o'clock last night. It was like,
Yeah.
I knew I forgot something.
Yeah, that is a thing we do.
But here's the thing. Nobody messaged me to go, hey, where's the show? So,
So really, it's all of your faults.
it's a win-win, right? That's going to do it for tonight. Thank you so much for joining us. And we'll see you, hopefully, if I remember that I have a show.
If we
next
both
month.
remember.
Yeah. Well, Tuesday worked. So
Yeah.
we'll be back with you as soon as we can. And don't forget, what do we always say around here, Jim? Sasquatch is real.
Yes.